He went from being a Virginia state representative to a conservative social media phenomenon, it seems, overnight. Recently, I had a chance to sit down with a man you'll probably recognize from your Instagram feed these days, Nick Freitas, on protecting freedom and inspiring our young people. Watch.
If you would have told me 10 years ago, hey, Nick, you know what your primary job is going to be? It's as a social media influencer, I probably would have slapped you. But I think where it really kicked off, I started to realize the power of social media when it came to just debating politics and recognizing that the press was never going to give me a fair shake and would, in many cases, deliberately misrepresent what I was saying. And so I started to just do things online. But the critical point was in 2018. In 2018, it was shortly after the Parkland shooting, and I sat on the subcommittee that heard all the gun legislation, and I heard it all. It wasn't the typical, you don't care about kids dying, it's you support terrorism. And so I gave a 7-minute speech on a defense of the Second Amendment. And during that speech, I kid you not, 3 Democrats left the floor in tears. They requested a 15-minute recess to gather their composure, and then they spent the next 3 days just like attacking me on the floor. And I remember thinking, what did I say? I didn't say anything that was remotely as bad as what they've been calling us, accusing us of over the last 3 days. And I finally said, you know what? I'm going to take this speech, I'm going to put it on Facebook, and I'm going to let the people decide what I actually said instead of what the Washington Post and the Richmond Times-Dispatch said. And not just on my channel, but the amount of times it was shared, it got tens of millions of views. And all of a sudden I realized, the American people have been inundated with a narrative that they don't agree with. And they're looking around for people to actually not just defend the conservative perspective, and certainly not to defend Republican politicians, to defend them, to defend what they believe.
How many people are you reaching now a month? And I know that it's hard to tell.
It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 to 3 million people a day.
What's the approach that you've taken that is really resonating with those folks?
It's a a healthy dose of passion and sarcasm. So for instance, I had a college student look at me and just full of righteous indignation and say, how would you feel if immigration authorities ripped apart your family? And I said, I'd feel horrible, which is why I don't enter other countries illegally. And guess what? Works every time.
Did it surprise you that in so many ways it was just that simple to start really having an impact?
Yeah, I didn't expect to take off the way it did, and I thank God for that. And a lot of the way I approach the way I talk about things is not, oh, look at me, I'm the standard, or here's the 5-step process to fix everything. It's more of, this is what I've learned doing stuff.
What is your principal message to young people, young conservatives, about what they need to do to protect American freedom?
You have to understand what it actually means. And so I think the number one thing I try to explain to young people is, like, you need to understand, like, where is your identity rooted in? My identity is in Christ. I love serving as Green Beret. I love serving as member of the House of Delegates. Those were professions that I think are important, but they're not my identity. It's first in Christ, then it's being a husband, then it's being a father. And I like to tell a lot of these students that political freedom is definitely something you should fight for because it's unique in world history. But the thing that gives me the most joy in life are not my freedoms, it's my responsibilities.
You're very commonsensical in your approach, but there are these voices within the conservative movement that are, what I like to say, is playing to the algorithm for their own economic purposes or whatever reason. They are being divisive and they are pulling apart aspects of the movement. How much does that concern you?
I don't expect conservatives to be a monolithic group that agree on everything. We should have disagreements and discussions. But when does that become subversive? When do you have somebody that has now crossed this line? Well, I don't think it's when they're calling out Republican leadership or even the president, for instance. I think it's more of a question of what do we use as our standard for truth? I think there's a huge impulse to get likes, to get reshares, to get clicks, to get all of that, because it's almost like the profit motive, right? If I'm getting more of that, I must be giving the people what they want, and that's a good thing, right? And I think we need to go back to, why are we doing this? The problem is there's nothing easier than being an eternal skeptic.
When you talk to young people, where do they want to see conservatism or the conservative movement go in this post-Trump era?
I have to tell you, one of the things that's impressed me so much about YAF students is, one, they are asking much more deeper and philosophical questions than the next election cycle, which I think we've had a deficit of that as of late. Young men are always asking me about, how do I be a good man? What does that mean? And you got to figure the place we've gotten in this country where young men have to ask that question because it's not as evident as it used to be. It's sad that they have to ask it. It's great that they're asking it. What are we fighting for? And I think YAF is actually providing a very intellectually honest and consistent message for that. And it's the idea that we are fighting for God, we are fighting for our families, we are fighting for country. And we have every right to defend that way of life. And we have every right to be skeptical of people, even our fellow citizens, who wish to diminish that and completely alter it into something that we don't even recognize anymore.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.